The problem of difference. In order to set the foundation, we'll have to start with the blank slate. In its atheistic nature, the blank slate derives our identity from our attributes, not our relations. In its conception, the blank slate discounts the parents or ancestral line of the individual whose conditioning is being studied. It uses science and statistical methods to derive its laws. In it, there are always two sides or groups that oppose each other where the individual's character or background is discounted. The only thing that matters is the attribute that has caused the division between the two groups. A few examples of things that differentiate humans would be mental state, physical attractiveness or fitness, race, nationality, ethnicity, spiritual beliefs, financial standing, genetic predisposition, intellectual ability, culture, emotional health, and reputation. Being red-pilled is to understand that groups defined by a certain attribute share behaviors and beliefs governed by our nature, and that these behaviors and beliefs are different from those of the group that do not have this attribute, regardless of the character or history of the individual. There are two states in which these differences can be perceived. The first, that all the individuals in the other group are the same, and they only change when an individual from this group is influencing them. This is a personal and internal difference. The change is within your control. In this instance, you are the common denominator. The second is that all the individuals in the other group are different, but when they interact with an individual from this group, they all fit into a deterministic mold and lose their differences. This is an objective and external difference. There is nothing you can do to modify or change this behavior. In this instance, they are the common denominator. In order to think in a red-pilled manner, you need to perceive the individual you are interacting with from a personal and objective view. You must be aware of the internal changes you can make to yourself in order to affect their behavior and the behaviors they will manifest regardless of your state. Your perception must be transformed to the point where you perceive the outside group as the same, with or without your influence. With this perceptual structure, you will be able to understand why the influence you apply to a particular individual within that group must be tailored to influence the group identity and not the identity of the individual. Acting in a manner that suits an individual within the group is not the same as acting in a manner that suits the group identity and does not yield similar results. The group identity takes on a personhood with its own beliefs and behaviors that may be different from those of the individuals within the group. In most cases, it would be more beneficial to dispense with the beliefs and character of the individual and interact with them as if you were interacting with the group personhood. This leads to biases, stereotypes, and other social constructs, some true, some false, and most not polite to state out loud. Holding these beliefs about groups is oftentimes more beneficial to your survival and interests than treating all individuals as blank slates. This is a problem of difference. Is the personhood of a group truth? Not necessarily. But the group personhood is more true than the living, breathing, fleshly individual that belongs to the group. They are more real in the same way that an abstract formula is more real than an instance of it. It is the difference between anecdotal evidence and a scientifically proven formula. The instance being the individual from the group and the formula being the spirit of the group. The group personified is a false god, but a god nonetheless. Sacrificing to the group spirit yields a greater harvest than sacrificing to the individual. This creates a schism within the individuals belonging to the influencing group. There are those that believe in the group spirit and those that deny its existence. The deniers priding themselves on their works, personal laws, and moral deeds. The believers understanding the limits of their works and relying on their change of heart and knowledge of the word of the group's spirit in order to have reliable and consistent influence. The blank slate alters perception. It gives you new eyes. All gods have domains they preside over. When you become one that believes in the spirit of the group, you move into the domain of that god. The god offers half-truths. Their statements and laws always have a chance of being wrong. The believers sacrifice to them despite this, because the odds of the god are better than the odds of the individual from the group from which the god originates from. After belief, when you look at an individual from the group, you do not see the individual. You see the spirit of the group. You believe the utterances and actions of the spirit over those of the individual you are interacting with. What is true for the spirit is true for the individual, even if the individual may believe otherwise. The blank slate puts an emphasis on education as the solution to all problems. This is another problem of difference. That if you would just learn all the laws offered to you by the God of the group and follow each of them without sin, then you would be prosperous and successful. That education on all the ways of the God of the difference that has spawned the antagonist that troubles you will defeat the antagonist and solve all the relational issues between you and the individuals from the group. The mind is exalted above all else. It is seen as the only organ in your body that is capable of giving you agency over your life. Your mind being your nervous system, all the organs that take in information, and the organ that processes it. You perceive it as the part that gives you relation with the world, and thus your identity is based in it. You consider yourself your mind, knowledge your pathway to power and agency, science and statistics your tool to generate knowledge, and studying your work. There is no other organ that perceives, no other identity that you attribute to yourself beside the voice in your mind. Difference being your main problem in this world, you strive to know the gods of each group from each difference so that they may give you the laws required for your success. A third problem of difference is that there is no end to the many gods of differences between us can spawn. A third problem of difference is that there is no end to the many gods the differences between us can spawn. Believing that education is the key to life, you may try to educate the individual you are having differences with. If only they knew what they are or their group god, then they would act to eliminate the problems in their actions that arise from your differences. The problem is that the individual never comes to believe in the spirit of the group from which they belong to, no matter what the difference is. You never come to believe in the spirit of your own group and are thus unceasingly sinful. This is the problem of difference. The heart as a mind of its own. The blank slate fundamentally exists within a relation. This relation is created by the function that the difference serves to each individual in either group. Whether this function is good or bad, the dynamic exists within every interaction between the two groups. The two sides of the distinction are nevertheless related to and dependent upon each other. The entire study of philosophy is the striving to solve the problem of difference. Many thinkers have tried to solve the problem by attempting to remove identity from the discussion. They are frustrated by the identities that inevitably arise from either side of the relation between the two dependent, distinct sides. By removing identity, they are unable to identify the two opposing sides and thus lose the entire problem. Removing the identity would mean removing the relation between the two sides. Removing the relation would mean removing the function they serve to each other and the different functions they serve to an outside object. If two things serve no function to each other, and serve the same function to something else in the exact same way and are equally efficient, then there is no difference between them, and thus no problem. Without the relation, the attribute that differentiates is meaningless. It is the relation that creates the identity, not the attribute or characteristic. The problem of difference is intractable from identity. Two inanimate objects cannot have a relationship. This means that the problem of difference is bound to living beings. Animals are living, but we do not discuss them at length when studying the problem of difference because they have no laws among themselves. They have no concept of sin and thus do not worship any gods. Their lives are bound in the realm of the flesh. There is an ownership that comes with identity. When two distinct related identities interact, one must be dominant and the other submissive. It is a violent and sometimes deadly clash when both identities battle unceasingly for the dominant spot. Who the dominant one of the two identities should be is not always defined by He who created us. Should one identity triumph over the other, the submissive identity will harbor feelings of resentment and plot their vengeance for their perceived injustice. It becomes a never-ending wrathful cycle. We humans are the ones that must wrestle with the concepts of sin, atonement, and forgiveness. In a previous video titled, "What is Forgiveness?" I argued that no rational man can forgive. In other words, no man that believes only in his mind as his ability for the attainment of power and agency can forgive. It does not exist in the realm of the mind. The identity of the mind is incapable of comprehending it. The intelligence required for forgiveness resides elsewhere. Forgiveness is an intellectual structure that belongs in the realm of the heart. The lesson is taught to the heart and not the mind. The law is written on the heart and not the book. Our intellect is our relation to our Creator, and the differences between us, our lessons. Intellect comes in many forms, and the lessons are taught differently to each of these forms. These intellectual forms are the mind, the blood that runs in our veins, the gut, the flesh, the heart, and the pineal gland. The mind calculates and takes in information from your five senses. It is used to observe the material world, process information, review the past, make decisions, imagine, and make plans for the future. The more informed you are, the better your plans and decisions, giving you a higher chance for survival in the future. Your blood remembers who you are. It contains DNA that codes all the organs in your body that create you. It contains portions of the images of all those that came before you. It stores the traditions, beliefs, and practices of your ancestors. With modern science, we can trace back the maternal line of a woman all the way to the first mother. With the DNA of a man, not only can we trace back the maternal line, but we can also trace the paternal line too. The blood and the surname go together. The problem with DNA tests is that it disregards marriage. Marriage was not created by a rational, materialistic mind. It has always been spiritual since its conception. The paternal trace tracks all the fathers, regardless of whether they pass down their surname or not. The same is true for the maternal trace. The third test looks at everyone. There is no scientific way to trace the line of the surname. Even though the blood has power, the surname holds the authority. It is the surname that teaches its history to the descendants, not the blood. The surname decides the work and mate preference. It shapes your destiny in life. The gut intuits. It discerns the intentions of the people in your life. Its discernment is not only limited to people, but to machines, animals, and spirits as well. Based on your previous experiences, it helps you determine whether something has a good or evil intention towards you. The flesh is more animalistic in that its primary function is desire. Hunger, procreation, companionship, rest, comfort, safety, admiration, esteem, happiness, etc. It functions to sense what is painful, deadly, gratifying, and enlivening. It moves away from the painful and deadly and moves towards the gratifying and enlivening. The heart is that which is faithful or faithless. Its factory setting state is faithless in nature. Faith is a choice. It is the lesson that forgives. The lesson brings about the transformation of the heart. A transcribing of the laws of difference derived by the mind from scientific and statistical study onto the heart, so that agency may not stem from rationality, but from a transformed heart. The last being the pineal gland, which prophesies that which has happened and is to come. This is the most mysterious of the intellects, being that most people go their whole lives without noticing or outright denying its existence. Your pineal gland is a pinecone-shaped endocrine organ that is located deep in the middle of your brain, just above the sense function coordinating thalamus. It produces the melatonin hormone, which is believed to help synchronize circadian rhythms in different parts of your body. Circadian rhythms being physical, mental, and behavioral changes that follow a 24-hour cycle. It is believed that these natural processes respond primarily to light and dark, but I do not think this is the case. Following the belief, the highest levels of melatonin are released when there is darkness, and the least when there is light exposure. Some sources also state that it also helps in regulating menstrual cycles in females, aligning them with the fullness of the moon. If the mind studies difference, the heart has or lacks faith in difference. The blood roots your identity in and defines your difference. The flesh desires novelty in difference, and the gut navigates difference. Then the pineal gland facilitates your likeness to difference. We have already established that identity cannot be removed from the problem of difference. Thus, for you to have a likeness to difference, difference must have an identity. If we look at a transformed heart, a heart that is faithful, it must have faith in that which has agency. Therefore, like the gods derived from a group established by a difference from you, difference is a god as well. The problem of difference is the basis for René Descartes' argument for the existence of God and his more mystical thoughts on the pineal gland. He described it as the principal seat of the soul and the place in which all our thoughts are formed. He justified the statement by explaining that it is the only part of the brain that is not double, that the inputs from your two eyes or ears must be united at a singular location before being considered by the soul. It is considered, in most spiritual sects, as a sensory organ known as the third eye. Through the pineal gland, you can connect to the spiritual world in a way that your other sensory organs cannot. I attribute the function of the pineal gland to the likeness of difference because as you build a relationship with difference, you gain the ability to use your pineal gland to sense the spiritual realm. The more you use your mind to study difference and your heart to grow your faith in difference, the more active your pineal gland will become. The high concentration of melatonin which is secreted by the gland helps you fall asleep. When sleeping, we dream and connect to the spirit realm without the hindrance of all other senses and the illusion of space-time. During your spiritual awakening, you will start waking up at odd hours of the morning, the most common time being 3 a.m. This will happen regardless of when you fell asleep or how tired you were when you did. This phenomena is the reason why I do not fully believe that the pineal gland only secretes melatonin when it is dark and decreases the volume only when there is a source of light. It has more agency than we give it credit. The more you deepen your relationship with and likeness to difference, the more abilities you will gain. The most famous being the ringing of the ears. Initially, you may think you have a hearing problem called tinnitus because only you can hear this ringing. Should you go for a checkup, you will find that your ears are in the best shape they have ever been. Yet, they still ring. It is a misconception that the ringing comes from the ears. If you sit and truly feel the vibration, you will sense that it emanates from your pineal gland, a material manifestation of the spiritual realm that only you can sense. If you are a dreamer, you may have dreams where you hear the ringing even in your sleep state. Should the vibration be strong enough, it is capable of waking you from your sleep, with the ringing continuing from the dream into waking life. The pineal gland is not only limited to this ringing vibration. In the same way that you can see, hear, taste, feel, and smell things which are in your dreams, the same is true with your pineal gland with regards to the spiritual realm when you are awake. These stimuli, independent of your eyes, nose, tongue, flesh, and ears, are strong when there is a spirit near you or when there is a spirit communicating with you. To those that fully develop their pineal sensory skills, they are able to hear these voices as clearly as if there were a material person speaking into their ears. They are able to smell the character of a person or the nature of a situation. They are able to see spirits as clearly as other humans, if they be not afraid. They are able to discern phenomena by the taste they leave in their mouths. They are able to interpret meaning on their skin. Most useful is that they are able to think thoughts that are not theirs. The only thing differentiating these types of people from the mentally disturbed are that these stimuli are relevant and appropriate to the situation. That if two people of such ability were to look upon the same thing, they would report the same message. It is like having a second tongue, layer of skin, set of eyes, set of ears, and set of nostrils, only that they sense meaning instead of material, being instead of flesh, not bound by time or space. As you kill the difference between the heavens and the earth, you will become incredibly sensitive to the states of the moon, particularly the full moon. You will learn to increase your likeness between your intelligence and your spirit, so that as it is in heaven, so is it on earth. There will be no difference. The problem of difference, partially solved within you, but yet still insufficient. The flesh will die, and all you will become is spirit.